everybody. I hope you have been enjoying your first official week of summer. Yay! Congratulations for making it through another school year, and especially those of you that had to move to online learning. Congrats, and congratulations to your parents as well, because I know that was difficult. So congratulations and welcome. We're glad that you're here for another children's church lesson. I'm really excited for today's lesson. It just kind of spoke to me with everything that's been going on in the past several weeks and months. So I pray that it will bless you and your family as well. So today we'll be starting in 1 Kings. We'll be looking at 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, and chapter 3, verses 3 through 15. And our big idea for today is that God gives success through obedience and wisdom. So obedience means that you do what somebody asks you to do. So for example, if your parents ask you to please set the table, being obedient would mean that you set the table. And the same applies for God. When God speaks to his people and he gives us a direction on what to do, it's our job to be obedient to him and do what he asks of us. And wisdom means to have knowledge and good judgment. So our study today starts in chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Here's David. He's growing really old. He's about to die. And once David dies, his son Solomon is going to become king. So David is telling Solomon all that he needs to do to be a great king. And I want to read to you what David says to Solomon in chapter 2, verses 2 through 4, so you can hear exactly what he says. David says to Solomon, "Be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in obedience to him and keep his decrees and commands, his laws and regulations, as written in the law of Moses. Do this so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel." So wow, what great advice that is, even for us today. David is telling Solomon to be strong and courageous, to be responsible and obedient, to be faithful to God with all of his heart, and to trust God with his success. So now we're going to fast forward to chapter 3, verses 3 through 15, and now Solomon is king. Verse 3 tells us that Solomon loved, obeyed, and worshiped the Lord. Verse 3 says, Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to his instructions given to him by his father David. So one night, the Lord appears to Solomon in a dream. And in verse 5, God says to Solomon, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." I'm going to pause there for a moment and we're going to play a little game. Are you ready? If God told you that you could ask for any one thing and that he would give it to you, what would you ask for? So you can pause the video for a minute if you want to share with somebody in the room with you. But would you ask for money? Would you ask for an endless supply of candy and yummy treats? Would you ask for a fancy new toy, maybe an iPad or something like that? But guess what Solomon asked God for? He asks God for wisdom. And this little gift right here is going to represent wisdom. Proverbs 16, verse 16 says, "How much better to get wisdom than gold, to get insight rather than silver." So what that verse is telling us is that wisdom from God is far more valuable than any other gift that we could possibly be given or that we could possibly ask for. So can you believe that Solomon had the chance to ask God for anything he wanted? He could have asked for $1 million. He could have asked to live forever, for protection against his enemies, but he asked for wisdom. And remember that wisdom means knowledge or showing good judgment. So God was pleased with Solomon that he asked for wisdom instead of asking for something that would only benefit himself. So God says in verse 12, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart. And then God continues on in verse 13 by saying, moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. So God blessed Solomon with a discerning heart, but on top of that, riches and honor as well, because he was pleased with Solomon. So that is where our lesson ends for today. But the thing that I really pray that we can take away from this is that there are two types of wisdom. There's worldly wisdom and there's godly wisdom, and there's a big difference between the two. So I'm going to show you some examples. So worldly wisdom means that we rely on ourselves and our own desires when we make decisions. But godly wisdom means that we depend on God to help us guide us through our making decisions. Proverbs 3 verse 5 is one of my favorite verses, and it tells us to trust in the Lord with all of our hearts, to lean not on our own understanding, but in everything we do, to acknowledge God, to submit to God, and know that He will make our path straight. So godly wisdom means leaning on God when we make decisions. Worldly wisdom means that we do things because we want to be on top, we want to be popular, we want to be famous. But godly wisdom means that we do all things for the good and the glory of God. Just as 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, which is another one of my favorite verses. And finally, worldly wisdom means that we might get wisdom and advice from other people, from our cell phones, from our computers, TV, media, that kind of stuff. But godly wisdom means that we get wisdom from, guess who? God. Proverbs 2 verse 6 says, for the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. So ultimately, all of these things here on the worldly side, they're useless, they're not eternal. But godly wisdom is great. It helps us in our work and it brings us joy. So last week we learned that if we ask God for forgiveness, He'll forgive us and He'll give us a pure heart. And the same is true for wisdom, that if we ask God for wisdom, guess what? He will give it to us. So I've been finding over the past several weeks and months, just with everything going on, that so often I just feel confused, like I don't know what I'm doing or what's going on. Have you ever felt like that way too? So I've been praying a lot lately that God would bless me with wisdom to help me make decisions that I don't feel like I can make on my own. But if I turn to myself or to other people or my computer or the internet in trying to make those decisions, I can be pretty sure that I'm going to come up short of what God really wants me to do. So this lesson reminds us to seek wisdom from God and His Word in everything that we do, and to be careful about seeking other sources of wisdom. So I repeat Proverbs 3 verse 5 in my head over and over and over and over when I feel tempted to go my own way or to give in to worldly wisdom. And I want to end today by sharing with you something that I found right in our teacher's guide for this curriculum. And I hope it will encourage you and your family as you start this new week. So here's what it says. True wisdom is to trust in Christ alone for His salvation and to follow His example of humble obedience. So that's all I have for you today. I encourage you to go check out our craft video for today. I'll see you there.